Welcome to What Drives You, where we explore our human potential and seek the most efficient and effective personal growth methods and celebrate the miracle of just being alive. I'm your honored host, Kevin Miller. In this episode, 5 steps to recognize and resolve the daily disappointments that diminish our best self. Some people relate to traumas, some to grief, but everyone will admit to relating to disappointment, even if you're a chronic minimizer like myself. And we're not here today to exaggerate and inflate anything, and nobody wants to give extra attention to disappointment, so it limits them in any way. That, however, is exactly my concern. Are we healthfully dealing with the random disappointments, or are we repressing unresolved feelings that are, in fact, limiting us? Obviously, I think that we are. That's why we're talking about it. I mean, you may be CEO of a company clearing $1 million per year, and yet you have unresolved disappointments, whether they're from your childhood or last year, that are limiting you. Maybe they are limiting your performance, your income, your relationships, or your fulfillment despite everything seemingly being okay. That was my focus as I entered into the following discussion with acclaimed grief educator and multiple best-selling author, Christina Rasmussen. Christina studied to become a therapist and a crisis intervention counselor, even doing her master's thesis on the stages of bereavement. And she thought she understood grief. Then, with daughters 9 months old and 2.5 months old, her 31-year-old husband was diagnosed with stage 4 colon cancer, and he ultimately passed away. Well, it was then that Christina truly grasped the depths of sorrow and pain that accompany great loss. Well, 4 years after Christina's husband died, she created the Life Reentry process, which launched her on a mission to bring compassion and grace and validation to thousands of people while simultaneously establishing an exit for them from what she termed the waiting room. Well, she wrote a book. It's called Second First, and it became just a runaway bestseller. And then she wrote another book, Where Did You Go? Now she has a new book, and that's our muse here. It's called Invisible Loss, Recognizing and Healing the Unacknowledged Heartbreak of Everyday Grief. So she's taken her experience and the research from severe and tragic loss and brought the same profound process of healing into our everyday grief and, as I said, disappointments. She's found that it's not the size of the big trauma or the little disappointment that matters, but whether we resolve it. And again, she has a process to help us understand if we have or have not. I'm going to cite that most of us have some we have not, and it is limiting you, just as it is me. Christina, folks, she's a pure joy. I'm actually in Florida right now for a while. I just received autographed copies of her books signed to my mom, Joanne, who's just 4 months past my dad, Dan Miller, his death. So this inspiring conversation lit me up. I think it will light you up. And if you hear it and have questions, concerns, ideas, let me know. Let Christina know. I'll ask her and have her respond. Email me, kmiller@kevinmiller.co. Christina, I've been looking forward to this for so long. As we've been talking prior to the recording here, it is great when you have overlapping friends and acquaintances. And my brother, Jared Angaza, was just effusive when he saw you come into our space and our possibility for being on the show. And he says, oh my gosh, you have to have her on the show. She is the kind of person that you want to talk with and that your audience wants to hear from. And so it's just an honor. Christina, thank you for being here.
And Kevin, I'm so excited to have this conversation with you. And I know we've never met before, but it already feels like it's going to be fun. It's going to be great. And we're going to forget even that it's recording. This is when I feel the most myself. And it's not an interview. It's a conversation as if we met somewhere in a coffee place and just sat down and talked. And when I talked to Jared, it was amazing. It was just incredible on both sides. And we kept saying, what is that? What's happening right now? So I'm looking forward to talking to his brother.
Well, It's the resonance of conversations and topics that we care about and that we know matter. And as I've been just reading your book and your material and looking at, loss, looking at grief, these are terms that Christina, I've been involved in this, call it personal development, area for so long. And yet I have not really resonated with those terms, grief and trauma and whatnot, only to find out as I get to know me, which we're going to talk about as part of this, that so often we don't know about ourselves. And I didn't understand it. So it's just there as this, as you've defined it, this loss, this feeling that brought, some sadness. That's literally the first line of your book. Many people carry around a feeling of sadness. And I just like, they do. I mean, we all know it. We see it in other people if we don't see it in ourselves, but it's just this feeling of, it feels a little off, but oh my gosh, I should be grateful. I got everything. I got a decent job and I've got family and I've got happiness and some joy and stuff, but there's just, it's kind of a longing and it just sits there. And I feel like you have gone in and uncovered it. And I hope that's what we're able to do for everybody today.
Yes. And I hope it's okay. I start by saying that, and it's not something I've ever said before to another host. So I'm going to trust you're going to see our conversation is going to be very direct from the beginning, and I can't help it. But
good.
I was watching some of your videos that you share online, and I saw you walk in a field a few times, an empty big field. And especially I love the one with the herd of elks.
Yeah.
That was an amazing thing. You talked about awe, and that was an amazing thing to even watch in a secondary way. But as I was watching you, Kevin, and I hope it's okay for me to say this, I did feel that sadness you mentioned as you were reading the book. I felt it was almost as if, like, I knew you within your inner world. Like you felt like you're doing these interviews, you're learning from all your guests. You are spending your life trying to better it because there is that sadness somewhere. And I felt that and saw that. And then I said to myself, maybe I'll say something about it. Maybe I won't, but I think we connected well enough for me to say that. And I hope that's okay.
It is, and agreed. And I appreciate you even picking up on that. I think there's some aspect where I'm a contemplative person, and maybe, you look at types and melancholy and whatnot. Sometimes the gravity of life, it gives me so much joy, but it can also feel overwhelming. Yet to what you're speaking about, this journey, this is a journey that I'm on that I get to share, with others. And as I've gotten to understand myself, I want to be maybe a dualistic aspect of to be grateful for what I am learning and gleaning and benefiting from now. And yet I got to admit, there's also a kind of a feeling of regret for what I missed, that, I want to be positive about it, but I look at things and I do have regret. And we had Daniel Pink on the show, the power of regret. And I look at that and there's things that I did in my ignorance. I had a good heart, but in my ignorance, and I've hurt my family. I hurt my friends, or I limited things. I could have given them more. Now, to be honest, I think there's ways that it wasn't a traumatic hurt, but ways that I didn't serve them well. And I didn't know. And now that I do, I'm so grateful. But yeah, I have a lament for that. And I think that's what you're picking up on.
Yeah. And you, when you're interviewing these awesome people, like, I see you listening, but also like a student. And I don't know, and that meant a lot to me as well, that you're someone who's here to have these conversations, to learn yourself and be on this journey, because I am a student myself. And one of the things that I truly believe in, not only with the book I wrote, but my mission, my vision for the world that we live in, is to create experiences for people to have permission to be vulnerable. And I'm getting chills just saying that, Kevin, to show up in our authentic self. And when we first, got on this call, we talked about, having a bite to eat and having a cup of coffee. And like, we are just two people, meeting to discuss something about our lives and to share it with others. And in that discussion, we both have to be vulnerable in ways that allows the listener to say they are vulnerable like this. And that's hard. I know it's hard. If they're vulnerable like this on this call in front of thousands of people, then so can I in my conversation with my wife, with my husband, with my kids. Kids know as parents when we are not being our truest selves to them, and they know something is concealed, and we have to always be honest, especially when they're so young. That's when they're picking it up the most. So I want always our conversation to be so, for us to be fragile, and to have the courage. Otherwise, invisible loss, or what I call that hidden sadness that we all carry for very specific reasons that we are not even aware of, will never be revealed, not only to others, but to ourselves. And this is the biggest discovery I feel like I've made, is that because we are hiding so much of ourselves from each other, there's no sharing and no processing of a moment of impact or of an event that happened, so we can understand it for ourselves. We suppress it so much, and gosh, we end up living absolutely the wrong life, even if that dial between the wrong and right is so narrow. That field, that spectrum is, you may be wrong in very small ways, but let me tell you, that makes a big tragic difference in someone's life.
That statement of hiding so much from others, as I was studying your book, your message, what resonated was how much I was inadvertently have been hiding from me. I don't know me. And so for you to uncover this, again, back to that line, many people carry around a feeling of sadness. I was like, boom. Yeah, we do. I do. And I see it in the people I'm closest with, who are the people on the show, amazing people. And yet they hold some of that. And you outline the reality of that, even coming from childhood. Somebody gave me a definition, I think it was of trauma, Christina, but just to some degree, they said, it's just, when you deal with something and you just don't have the capacity to handle it. Well, what kid has not had that? And I've been thinking lately, I think I did one of my little short shows on just disappointment. Just call it disappointment. Who hasn't been disappointed, especially for guys who don't often tap into grief and trauma, whatever. I say, okay, dude, if you've ever been disappointed, well, they can list a whole list of disappointments that they know right off the top of their head. Yes. I can. That's the thing I can most tap into, this long list. And I had somebody pull out a couple of them one time, and they said, it doesn't feel like you've really reconciled that one. I said, no, I'm still hurt by it. Or it just, you're right. I haven't. So an unreconciled, unresolved, and we're all walking around from those, because as you go back into our youth, I want you to speak on that, because I have struggled with it for so long. The original self, right? You call it, because when people talk about, coming back to your whole self, coming back to whatever, I mean, I don't know that many of us have anything original to come back to. We never knew. Can we even have or be? I'll just throw that at you.
Yes.
Can we even resonate with what is an original self? Does it even exist? Because we come out of we are programmed from, epigenetics to in the womb to coming out of it. Can we even be an original self, or is that just a new discovery for anyone if they can get close to it?
I love this question so much, because when I was writing about what invisible loss was, it was very clear that it was the loss of that self somewhere down the road. And it was, so imagine you start your life. And actually, let me also say that in the last 14 years, I taught thousands of people this work. And And I learned this. The reason why this work is even here is because I learned from the students. This is what it is today, because I learned so much from them. And I will tell you again, I'm getting goosebumps because the first time years and years ago, I was doing this exercise I had done a few times, but never had someone question it. And he said to me, I was helping people find that thriver part of them, the kid-like self. And we were doing an exercise on memory recall of that self, which, by the way, I have so much to talk about memory and what we are really recalling and what we're really remembering and whatnot. But he raised his hand, and we will also talk about men and invisible loss for them. My God, we have so much to talk about. He raised his hand, and this is years ago now, and he said, "Christina, I'm sorry, but I don't remember my thriver self. I don't have memories of ever being happy in myself, ever." I mean, I could cry about this. And then a couple of other people raised their hand and said, "I don't remember either." And that's when it hit me, Kevin. And I said to myself, there are people in this world that don't even know what it means to be themselves, to be happy, to thrive, to be like a kid, because certain things happened in their life early on. And we're not talking about big traumatic events here. And I want to be very clear about that as well. Yes, they can have big traumatic events as well. But if you haven't had that, actually the majority in our Western comfortable culture maybe have not experienced a death or a loss in a conventional way. What they've experienced was being rejected by peers, being put down in a public classroom setting, which, by the way, some of the biggest invisible losses have come from that shaming, public shaming, being seen as someone who doesn't have the abilities, skills, or ways to be special in any way. And there was a shift in perception of self so early on that person and others don't even remember the part of themselves that made them them, that part when you come out with your bike and you play in your neighborhood and you jump and you do and you're free to express without inhibitions. That part was lost such a long time ago, Kevin, for some people that they don't remember. They don't know what that is like. So how do we discover it for the first time? What is that you that is not changed by others? What is the part of you that doesn't actually exist with self-correction? Because we are self-correcting. The change that we are experiencing, you, Kevin, me, we are self-correcting to actually adapt to the expectations of this world that we're living in. And it's not right, and it's wrong, and I want to find a way, and I don't think there's going to be any other way to change something so significant, but having these conversations, and for you to go and speak to a friend after this conversation and tell them something about yourself that not that you've never shared before because you're withholding or hiding, that you had the freedom to actually open your mouth and say things that you didn't even know you wanted to say, Kevin. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yes, I pulled this out of your book, and you had the section where you ask us to do an exercise, which you do a lot of in the book. And you said, do this exercise. And it was, my story began when ... I grew up in ... The hardest thing, it's such a brilliant question. The hardest thing in my life has been ... Who's ever thought about, I mean, most people have not thought about that. And then, even though I was raised by great parents ... That, it's just a brilliant series of questions, Christina, because it hits those of us, I'm going to take ownership, who didn't have a specific, big trauma. We look and go, I had a pretty good childhood. I mean, or great. It seemed great. And we don't allow ourselves to say, but we don't allow ourselves, and we feel, and what your book kept reminding me of is guilt, that I tend to have guilt. And I see that in my peers. guilt for thinking anything bad. But to go back, it felt like I do need to reconcile this. That question, the hardest thing in my life has been, and I'll tell you, Christine, I mean, to make it short, I had incredibly loving parents. I was dramatically privileged. A lot of people listening to the show know my parents, Dan and Joanne Miller, but they only knew what they knew. And they praised me for things and they applauded me for things. And I just embraced that. That's who I am. You perform, you get applause. I don't remember my original self. I remember my performing. I wanted them to smile. I wanted other people to. I learned how to win friends and influence people and that it gets you accolades, and it did. But I never had that. Like if I could go back, I would have me ask my parents, hey, do you guys love me even if I don't perform well? And they, of course, would have said, of course we do. And then the hallelujah chorus would have gone off. And I think I would have understood an original me and gone, oh, okay, the performance stuff is great, but I can also just be Kevin. I never knew just Kevin. I'm 53 years old, feeling like I'm going through a rebirth.
It makes me feel like when you were saying just to be Kevin, you know, I could see the little boy, you know, when he was exploring activities and things and ways of expression that were only important to him because they made him feel good. And that's where your life reentry begins. It begins trying to figure out, trying to remember, trying to it's almost like this adventure or discovery, or it's almost like a time travel of some sort, going back to that place, Kevin, where you could be yourself and you had forgotten if anyone was watching, or so it was no performance. And actually the most successful people like yourself, especially in sports and in acting, in major stages, one of their invisible losses is to not feel love unless there is that performance and that clapping. And I wrote this blog a couple of weeks ago about the stage of our life. And I said, now imagine if there is no audience. What scenes are you changing from your life, Kevin? What's the dialogue that's coming in? Like if we remove that there's anyone listening, what are we saying? And for me, as we're having this conversation, I hope people are here, but I also don't want to say anything for them. I hope they take it, but I want this for us, for you and I, Kevin, for our conversation. Like, what if this is our last conversation we'll ever have with anyone? What if tomorrow this is it? What if this is it, Kevin? And let me say, I'm 52 years old, so just 1 year younger than you, Kevin. And I've reached this place in my life where not only, yes, I've been through a lot of tragedy before, but I've also have had a lot of invisible losses and regrets like you. But I have reached the place in my life that I will not say what is expected of me. I will not look in the way that I'm supposed to look. I will not come across in the way that I have been trained and you have been trained for us to show up as. I will be me. And whether I'm accepted or rejected, I really don't care, Kevin, because this could be my last conversation and I'm going to make it worth it. And I hope you are too, Kevin.
Okay. I'm going to adopt what you just said for my show. That'll be the premise for every new show with my guest. What if this is the last conversation we ever have? And this is what we get to impart to each other and to whoever gets to listen to the recording. That's so beautiful because it's just so real. There's nothing more real right now than that.
Yes.
Because nothing else is happening in our lives at the moment other than thank you for that. You know, as you were talking, Christina, I got a visual that I'll just share. I got a visual of, looking back, going back, which again is not, I did not grow up with the idea to look back. You just look forward. And there's a lot of relevance in that. And even, that with therapy, we can get so caught up in the back that we never emerge to go forward anywhere, but to go back and look. I'm going to pick on my peers, the average guy like me, to go back, because what I'm seeing, and we see it with each other. I see it with my friends. They see it with me. And it's kind of like, Kevin, his left arm doesn't work. He's a good guy, but his left arm doesn't work. And everybody sees it except me. And I'm just going forward, man. I can do a lot of things with my right arm. I'm good. And we go on. And yet if I would turn around and somebody say, you got some patterns happening, like you can't lift certain things because, your left arm doesn't work. I go, what are you talking about? Look back and see that thing that happened. Nobody meant anything bad, but you had that injury. And since then, your left arm hasn't worked. And if you look back and realize that, and now figure out, oh gosh, you can resolve that. You mean I can wake up tomorrow morning and my left arm that's never worked would work? Holy smokes, can I do something? That's the hope that I feel with this message. You're not calling me to go back and drum up trauma or to exaggerate something, but just to say, you got some stuff that doesn't work so well. You could get that working for you. And now the original you actually had, 2 arms. Of course, I'm thinking a good friend of mine who had cancer and he actually lost the arm. So John, if you're listening, yeah, that's fair. Otherwise, but for most of the concept of that is just beautiful. That's what feels from your message so hopeful, because of loss. We have loss. We're currently going forward every day, doing the best we can with these losses that we can. What is the word that you would say? Reconcile, resolve, mitigate? What resonates with you? I
think process and understand. There is a lot of confusing feelings when we experience an invisible loss, a loss that is not from so imagine, here's how I want to put it. And maybe this is the first time I'm putting it that way. Imagine we are walking in our life every day with a bunch of television screens all around us. Okay. Just imagine this metaphor. And every screen kind of teaches us something and kind of it's being replayed throughout our life. Now imagine that those screens and those messages, visual, verbal, nonverbal, have been telling us the same thing over and over again about the way we're supposed to feel, what is considered tragic, what is heartbreaking, what we should be sharing, what we should be not sharing, what it is that we are supposed to feel. We are being told all those things from day one. So when we find ourselves, let's say 45, 40, 30, 25, 60, 70, in a place where, oh gosh, I'm feeling this dread when I wake up in the morning, and I have no idea why, because I do have this beautiful home. I have this great relationship. Look at my friend who just got divorced. Look at them. I have all the things that all those television screens have told us they were the good things that we should have. So we are confused, Kevin. So this conversation, the book, all of these moments that we are sharing in a vulnerable way, I want to start replacing those television screens from around us with a different type of message. We are, and I feel very emotional when I talk about this. We are entering a new frontier as humans. Yes, technology, AI, and all that stuff is coming, but we have to advance ourselves by understanding who we are, who is the witness of our life, which witnesses we need to choose to put there, that we have control and the ability to replace some of those messages on those television screens. And I have the visual of that for the first time, and you inspired it. Like, this is the time where, in order to understand anything, so we can heal, so we can know the original self, is we have to start putting some original content out there to the trusted few friends that we have. And as we gain more courage, to the ones that we don't yet trust, but it doesn't matter, because we know it's the way to be. It's life and death, Kevin, by the way. This is not to be taken lightly. People commit suicide because they have never been seen, validated, and understood. And haven't you heard this many times when people say, gosh, this guy just had everything. What happened? Why? And we're calling it mental illness. It's not meant. It's like enough with making it worse. So we don't. So we remove ourselves from that experience so much because that person is mentally ill and he's committing suicide. No, we are the television for that person. We need to start producing content for them as well as for us. Sorry,
your analogy, Christina, is profound, and it's so divinely right that you came to what you just did now, that this is life and death. Again, I'm reading your book, I'm looking at your message, and I just honor what comes up into me. And what came up to me, it's the title on my notes as I'm looking down on my desk, was the loss of hope. That as we let this sadness go on, we let this disappointment eat away at us like termites, kind of, that it ultimately we lose hope. And to what you said, life and death, that's what I pulled up this morning, is diseases of despair. So folks, if you don't know that, if you look at chronic illness and disease, you'll find in America, diseases of despair is one of our fastest spiking areas of chronic illness and disease. And diseases of despair, think about it as depression, apathy, and then they look at, as a result of that, substance abuse and alcohol dependency and suicide. And so, Christina, I pulled up the first study that pulled up that suicidal thoughts and behaviors among under 18s rocketed by 287% between 2009 and 2018. And by 2010%, an increase, folks, among 18 to 34-year-olds during that same time. So it ended in 2018, that much of an increase. And we're, 6 years past that as we talk right now. And you look at it and go, why? We have more if we pick on America, we have more abundance, opportunity, information, access than ever. And I'm afraid that we're losing hope. We don't have purpose, and we are, what would you say, handicapped by these losses in us that, again, maybe we don't. Well, and to that, and you point this out, you're talking about these, what I appreciate, if somebody has some significant, gigantic trauma and tragedy, it's out there in the open and you deal with it, or you get the opportunity. It's these hidden, as you say, these hidden ones that we don't know what we don't know, which that's probably what scares me the most. Yes. Not scares me. That concerns me.
That scares you. I actually love that you said that, Kevin, because it is scary. And it's almost like we are living with the enemy and we don't know the enemy. Like, we're going into battle every single day, and we wake up and say, oh gosh, here we go again. And let me go to my job that everyone thinks is so great, and let me come home to my family who everyone thinks I love very much because they're the best thing that ever happened to me, and let me just live this life. And we don't know what it is that we would have wished instead. And if we dare to consider an alternative, then we are drowning from guilt and shame for even thinking that may not want this version of our life. And dare we say that to anyone, including our best friends who also have the same kind of life as us. And they're friends with our wives and husbands and kids. We don't have anyone to talk to. I wrote this article, Psychology Today, 3 or 4 weeks ago, and I was looking at all the statistics about the type of things that we discuss with our family and friends, Kevin. And we talk about news, the news cycle. We talk about facts. We talk about, I went to my daughter's birthday party. We talk about all those things. We share gossip, but really, we don't really talk about that inner conflict within. We don't talk to anyone about it. The conversations, we may be surrounded by a lot of friends and people around us. We may say in those studies, yes, I have 5 good friends, but especially for men, let me say this, and I believe that men we're being raised in an environment where there are certain expectations that are given to them. And I know there's a lot of invisible loss on women, and please, anyone who's listening, it's not like I'm saying that women don't experience invisible loss. They do, a lot of it, but there's more visible loss there. That is what the difference that I'm trying to express here. With men, they're not supposed to cry. They're not supposed to show vulnerability. They're supposed to still to this day go out and make them money and to show up in a very successful way, to be the breadwinner of the family and to be the best father they can be. And sometimes that's not a very natural instinct for them, but we dismiss that. We don't say, what is the natural instinct? What is it that they want to do? What is that? And let's not judge that. Let's, and I'm just using that as just a general example. Let's bring that out. Let's talk about it. Let's make it okay. And that's why people don't go to support groups. They're all women in there. Rarely you find men in those support groups because they don't feel like that. What should they say? What should they even share in those groups that will be accepted even by that group, Kevin, you know?
Yes, it's interesting. I'm sitting here thinking, how do I say this diplomatically with political correctness? Yes. And what would my kids, especially my older girls, how would they respond? That as we play in this aspect of, equality and women rising up and having equality with men, which is a need. And yet, and along with that, my concern sometimes is that then they act like men and we lose their feelings and emotion. And now I'm thinking, great, now we're just all repressed.
Yes. Yes.
This is,
yes.
Yeah.
All of us are repressed. And it's not even like, imagine if we actually start with this as a baseline. I'll just say it like this. Let's say, starting tomorrow, after everyone's listening to this conversation, they're going to wake up and say, wait a minute. Wait a minute. Is this the life I really want? Or is this the collective voice that's been imposed onto me ever since I was raised, ever since I can remember? And that's a big question. I get that, Kevin. That is a huge question. But you don't have to answer it. Just ask it and allow your partner, your spouse, your girlfriend, your boyfriend to ask themselves that same question. Because it's not going to be just you having this realization. It's going to be them too, because they've had a very similar, however different it is, very similar collection of screens around them telling them, this is when you're going to get married. This is when you're going to go to school. This is what you're going to study. This is, let's see how good you are at this. Let's see your skills. Let's perform. Let's find out how you are as a person, but only through the filter of these screens.
Yes. Okay. Again, your analogy, when we're done with this, I'm going to call a friend. I'm going to text a friend. He's a therapist. He was a therapist, 30 years. Did some profound work. And we talked yesterday for 2 hours because he feels like he came upon some revelatory treatments, insight. And yet I also know that he left the profession, if you will, left the practice because of his frustration with people actually changing. He says, we had dramatic impact on people when they were with us. They did these retreats, he and his wife and another couple. They did these. We'd have dramatic, so the what we were doing worked then, but then they go back to their lives. And now I'm going to use and this is why I'm going to contact him. They go back to the same screens, the same images, the same input, the same programming. And then over time, they just go right back, that if we don't change that. And of course, obviously your analogy with the screens is never more relevant today when we are surrounded. I mean, I've got 1, 2, 3, on my desk here right now. We are constantly surrounded with the cultural screens, the shoulds, the expectations, and then our own. And you've got me thinking, just my own. I mean, put me in a dark room by myself and I've got the screens of my life going through. And if I don't change them, then nothing changes. And that's what, again, I said the word scared. You said you like that. That's what concerns me. I feel like, gosh, if I don't, I want to get better. I want to look around, let's take a group of guys. I meet with guys a lot, and to look around, I do want to know what they're feeling and what's really going on underneath the hood, because we're all looking around at each other. And could we be happier? Could we do more? Could we have more fulfillment? Could we serve people better? Yeah. Well, then let's talk about what's not working. Oh, Bob, yeah, your left arm, it doesn't work. Let's address that. And, Bill, your right toe, is not working. And for you, and go around and just be honest. We've obviously done a lot. We're capable of a lot. We don't need to be ashamed of anything, but we're not perfect. So let's just talk about the imperfections, see what we can do. Can we get up and go back to work, back to our homes, to our spouses, our kids, and be better for them and have more joy to offer them? Sure. Sounds great. Let's change the screens, right?
And what a relief.
Yeah.
What a relief that we don't have to show up in this perfect version of ourselves where we get to have wrinkles when we grow older. We get to, and I'm not saying don't go use the latest innovations. I'm all about all of that. But I feel that that's your choice for yourself. If you want to do this for you, do it for you, and in the book and in the work that I've done for the last 14 years, I created a term called the waiting room. And I found this place, Kevin. I found this place in 2010. I remember starting my classes out and, getting all this feedback from people. And I remember saying to myself, when we experience whatever moment of impact that is, maybe your father, the way he looked at you, was looking through you instead of at you. But at 5 or 6 or 7 years old, you didn't have the words to say, are you looking at me? Or is he looking at me? To even question it. That's the way he thought people would see him, just through him, as if they are daydreaming for themselves, as if they're not really seeing you, but they're looking at you, but they're not really seeing you. And then there's a subtle change in that. And this kid, let's say, grew up always trying to get people to see him, right? Mm-hmm. And in the process of doing that, after that first moment of impact or the series of impacts that he experienced from his father, imagine now, there's no understanding of that. There's no language. He's not sharing this. He doesn't even know it's a thing, right? When we get impacted by something, whatever that something is, we don't recover, learn a lesson, and understand it and move to a new beginning. We go into a place between two lives, the one that we're living behind, two selves, the one that we're living behind because we've been impacted so much and we can't live it in the way that we used to anymore, and the one that we can have. And instead we go in a place in between where we're pleasing other people and we're doing things just to get that validation, that attention, that being seen in any way. And that's just an example of thousands of examples. And people die in that waiting room, in place in between, thinking that's their life, thinking that's the way it's supposed to be, thinking that it's supposed to be hard. No, Kevin, what if it's supposed to be easy, right? What if it's supposed to be better than just okay? What if we're here to experience joy in the most mundane ways, when we express ourselves, when we're feeling fulfilled in a way that it's not about who gets to see what we did, but it's about how it feels to actually do that thing that we love doing, whatever that is.
You just went through, and it pulled me back to, in your book, as you talked about childhood, you said, you're looking at the unacknowledged forms of grief that arise when we feel overlooked, misunderstood, or disregarded by the world around us. And you brought me back again to thinking about just parents. None of us can have perfect parents,
no,
or caregivers, or whoever raised us. And who doesn't have a memory in there, or in school? You talked about that in a public, forum. So in school with, kids or teachers or whatever, there's somewhere along the line, or if it was really great, at some point you left home and you probably had some instance of a romantic encounter that went wrong, or that you desired, mm-hmm. or a job and it's something you hope to get hired or promoted or whatever. And you were overlooked, misunderstood, or disregarded, and it left a mark. It left a screen that you then adjusted to, because we're humans, we're made for survival, rock on. And especially as a kid, you learn how to compensate so you can survive, because we're brilliant, little humans. And then we take that forward, and now we're Kevin at 53, and I still react to that stimulus with that same response. And I'm just working at a lesser capacity again, to just to humanize it and to take away the shame, the guilt, the fear of it, to go, I don't know anybody. So if whatever my friends that are listening to this are family, I don't know any of them who are perfect. And for most of them, you can kind of see their junk. We can all kind of see it. Yeah. Kevin, he just kind of comes off as sort of disinterested or flippant or arrogant, or I'm trying to think of all the things that could be attributed to me. There's a long list, and you're right. Whoever saw that in me, you're right to some degree. Now, it's not all of me, but that's an aspect of me, and it's probably an unhealthy adaptation, is what you said, to a stimulus that happened when I was 5 or 15 or 25 that was, well, back to your word, it was just hidden, and I didn't get it. And it may not have been this dramatic trauma that I, need shock therapy for, but it made me less of who I could be. Thus, we have the opportunity to be with you, Christina, and try to uncover what's hidden. And I'm going to keep using your analogy that's not in your book now, but of changing the screen.
It made you different.
Yes.
It's
unoriginal.
Yes. No, it made you someone else. And it's like Kevin, and obviously, I don't think I know another way to have conversations, but like completely in the moment, but like just wonder, imagine, contemplate another version of you that didn't materialize yet. Like let's get that version of you, of me. For everything I'm doing right now in my life is like, how do I get more me to be comfortable in showing up as me? Like in all these conversations I'm having, how can I tame down what I call the survivor voice, which is the survivor mindset of my brain, to say, are you going to be good enough for this conversation? Is this, are you worthy for whatever journalist, whatever conversation I'm having? Are you worthy? Are they going to like your message? What about rewriting? I call it mental stacking. What about coming in, extracting that which comes from the invisible loss I've experienced a long time ago, and is protecting me from more pain and loss, and keeping me in adaptation of myself, of this version of me that is not this. This is me, Kevin, 100%, obviously. And dare I consider myself, that I don't need to prepare for my own interviews and my own books and my own materials, right? The survivor self is like, say, you need to prep, you need to practice. I'm like, no, I'm going to go work out. That's what I did before your interview. So I'm going to go work out, listen to some great music, and thrive before I step on in this conversation or in any conversation I'm having, because that survivor self, that voice, that narrative of like pushing me down, keeping me protected, it's actually stopping me from unleashing my true wisdom, and the wisdom that we have, that is like, I went to see Furiosa, the Mad Max movie yesterday.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of like roaring engines. And I turn around and tell my husband, I'm just letting you know that all that sound, roaring, kind of like a rebellious, I know I don't look it, but that's inside of me every day. And every day I wake up and I want to express that. I have a lot of energy, emotional energy, mental energy. And if it doesn't express itself on a day-to-day basis by being my most authentic self, by saying whatever is on my mind, then I will die unhappy. Because it's not natural for us to be any other way, Kevin. It's not okay.
That's what gets me, Christina, because a minute ago you said, you referenced being another version of yourself.
Yeah.
Another version of you. Could there be? And there was a time when I thought, okay, I'm trying to accept that, but I can understand why to some people that feels almost offensive, scary,
yes.
whatever, to be, I don't want to be another version of me. I want to just be okay to be me. And then what I continue to have revealed through people doing the research and doing the work like you is that I am currently not being the real version of me. That what we're trying to do is, it's like, who was it? Was it Michelangelo who did the sculpture? And he said, I just chipped away till I found David in the sculpture, I think it was.
Wow, great metaphor. Great.
But that's what we're doing. We're chipping away at us. I'm continually chipping, and it'll be a lifelong process, chipping away to get to the real version of me. So do I want to be another version? Yeah, I want to be the realer version every single day of me that makes me more free, more fulfilled, more at peace. Because there's nothing that my family or friends wants more than just that. If I'm happier, more at peace, more fulfilled, it's selfish. We're all being, it makes me happier and it makes them happier. It's what I want from other people. I don't want to sit down with somebody and say, you know what, right now, would you just be your most depressed self? Or I'd really like to hang out with you, Christina. Just give me a call when you're super angry, like massively pissed off. That's when I want to hang out. I mean, I really would like to plug in when you're feeling great, and then you can make me feel great and we can, feel great. But to do that, back to you said the survivor self.
Yeah.
That's what I'm concerned about, is how much of me right here, right now, after I finish this and go be with my, let's say I'll be with a couple of my kids, are they getting me, or are they getting Kevin in survivor self? He's worried about this. He's not even present. He's thinking about that. He's hurt by this. He's anxiety, and they would rather not have that to me. And I'd love to give them back to you another version of me, the realer version of me. And the last thing you said was expressing myself, being my most authentic self, which I want to say is that's the original full of love, Kevin. Is that fair?
What would it look like? Imagine after this conversation ends and you go and you're about to step into a routine or an experience that you've had many times before. And what would you want that to look like? And remember, I don't want you to answer the question based on what do you think your kids need from you. I want you to answer it in the way that you're asking, what do you need for yourself in that future memory? What is it that will make you happy, Kevin? Not your kids, not their mom, not whoever is going to be there, but you. And that is, what would that be? What would that look like?
The first thought thank you, Christina. The first thought is just is at peace. Just at peace. I'm not thinking about other stuff. I'm just present. So I'm going to probably be with my daughter, Serene. She was here with me. She's doing something with a friend. She's hanging out at the office, then going off and doing something. And I'll probably connect with her. And it would be that I'm sitting there interested in what she did, why she's preparing for a trip. We're going on a trip tomorrow. And so she's thinking about that. And I would be able to tune into her, not consumed with myself, but not unaware of myself. That would be it. That would be the holding that. I'm aware of myself. I'm not tuned out and cut off, because I can do that. Just compartmentalize and cut everything off. I'm not thinking about that. And it's a willpower type thing. No, I'm aware and I'm present and I'm seeing the blue sky and I'm feeling the warmth of the sun. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, that was one of the greatest conversations I've ever had with Christina. And what a gift. And I'm so eager to impart what I learned to put it into place for myself and to other people. So I might be thinking about that. But then when I'm with my daughter, Serene, well, that's great. Her name's Serene.
I was going to say
yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I would be serene.
And you'll be serene and imagine, and you use the word connection, which I love, by the way. You said the word connection. And imagine that you connect with her in that moment in time from just without thinking, I should be like this as a father. I should make sure, nothing, just being yourself and to then take that authentic, original version of you and keep going with it for as long as you can. And always know that you'll go back to the waiting room. It may not last as long as you think. You might need, reinforcements, refreshments, you might need to listen to this conversation again or read the book or whatever it is you need to do, or talk to a friend and have each other to hold accountable. But imagine there's a version of expression with every person in your life that you that are important to you. Every person you're interviewing, there's a version of you, Kevin, that is not afraid to give the wrong impression. Is not even thinking about that. They're just showing up. You're just showing up as yourself. And this may come across as a snob, or like, it's okay that it comes across like that. The people, who knows what they're going to say listening to my voice, like, it doesn't matter. What matters for me and what matters to you and to the listener is that you are showing up in every conversation as the person you're discovering that you are, not who you think you are. And also remember, another thing I want to say is that we are so used to that waiting room life. We're so used to the screens around us. We are actually, please know, the more intelligent you are, the more adaptive you had to be. That survivor mindset is actually very intelligent, and it's lying to you. I can't emphasize that enough. The more advanced you are in your growth and evolution, the more advanced that part of you becomes, because it kind of makes sense. I've tried to get rid of that part of us throughout the last 14 years and with thousands of people. I'm like, let's try and send that survivor voice away. Let's try and have this conversation without it. What happens? What do you say? And it's hard to let go and we also have feelings of love towards that protective part of us. Our language for when someone recovers from breast cancer, from when someone recovers from an accident, something hard, they're such a survivor, and we're putting a positive spin on it. It's important that we experience survival because that's how we can get back on our feet. But it's also important to shed that title and label as soon as we can, even for 5 or 10 minutes at a time, that we step into who we really are instead of that survival battlefield experience. Like I feel great sitting here with you, Kevin, and my survivor self would have wanted me to be more, kind of, and I can do that more like proper or more, there's many ways to sound quotable or to sound like a real teacher or real guru. And I'm not interested in that. But the more you fight against it, the more defensive that part will be. And there's a divergent experience that people go through, not only within themselves, they feel like they're rebelling against every screen around them, but the people around you will try to stop you from experiencing that. And that's the norm. Because they're afraid of losing you. They're afraid of you changing. They're afraid of you becoming someone else. They don't know. They don't understand yet. And we can take some of those people with us if we slowly express this, have these conversations with each other. That's it. That's all we can do to begin with. I don't think there's anything else we can do, to be honest with you.
Agreed. Christina, your statement about intelligent people, that occurred to me probably a decade or more ago when I was working with people who were interested in moving from traditional employment to self-employment. So I had an organization that walked with people, and it occurred to me then that the, quote, intelligent people, insightful people were the quickest to discount themselves, quickest to see the threat, quickest, and they'd say, what about this? Well, that's really smart that you saw that. Meanwhile, and this is what knocked me for a loop a little bit, I saw this person over here, they're just too dumb to know they shouldn't be able to do it. And they just did it. And it kind of bothered me. I thought of myself as a risk taker, but I'm intelligent. And here's somebody, I thought, there's a numbnut over here. They didn't know any better. They're not smart enough to see the problems, and they just did it. Son of a gun. And so to your point, with being so adept with survival, and it does, what you ended saying there, that we're so survival oriented, safety oriented, as one of my friends would say, safety conscious even, that we are, and we're so prone to comfort these days that it's gotten me looking at for myself, Christina, why in this conversation, or not in this conversation, but in a conversation, in a relationship, realizing that, why do I feel threatened right now? Why do I feel uncomfortable? Am I in threat of something dire? And I look, no, what is the worst? I don't know. Why on earth am I so uncomfortable? My first level is just sit with the discomfort. And now I'm trying to chip away and really be okay with it, because part of my, even back talking about when I'm going to be with my daughter here, my tendency is to take responsibility for their feelings. That's what I embraced a long time ago.
Wow.
And having to back off of that and going, especially with my kid, I don't want them to feel bad, but man, I am not God. I have to tell myself, I'm not God. I'm going to do what I can, but I just can't. For me, I have enough kids that I finally burn out and realize I can't do it. I'm going to be ruined. I can't do it. And then realizing, I'm not supposed to. I am not God. I'm not responsible. I'm going to do my best. Yeah. But back to that, who do you want to be? I want to be able to be okay amongst even that, the discomfort. And man, we are a comfort-led culture. And I keep coming back and wondering, why on earth are we live with more threat? Like we're back in cavemen and the saber-toothed tigers prowling around outside, and we live like that. And we have less actual threat than anything. We're just, we're threatened by loss, by, emotional things. And we've become so.
And we take the wrong risks. So we may feel as if we are risking, oh my gosh, someone is listening to this and saying, this conversation doesn't pertain to me because, gosh, I take risks all the time. And this is the question I ask when someone says that. Are you taking the right risk? Are you risking everything just to perform? That is still the waiting room. Actually, some of the most elaborate waiting rooms are from people who are living these mega lives of success and risk and competition and doing amazing things. But that, my friend, could be one of the most sneaky, hidden, invisible waiting rooms you can find yourself in. And there's no getting out unless someone comes to you and says, what are you risking this for? Is this for clapping? Is this for the reasoning? A lot of people say, I'm risking, let's say a CEO in a big corporation is working day and night, morning to night. They're not seeing their family, and they're sitting there risking everything for the well-being of their employees. And they're such heroes. It's such a hero to everyone, right? It's so hard to see that this person is not alive. This person is living the wrong life. This person is very unhappy. And they are sitting there being told that they're doing all these great things. They're rescuing, self-sacrifice. When we self-sacrifice so much because it's the right thing and it's what we trained ourselves to do, and it could look like you're doing it from a yacht. It could look like you're doing it from your mansion. It could look like you're doing it from, I don't know where from, next to your beautiful wife or husband or whoever you are. I hope you're listening to this conversation. This may be the absolutely most wrong life you're living. And that the survivor voice, that mindset is telling you that you have responsibilities and you have so many reasons as to why you can never even step down from that. Imagine stepping down from a CEO position to what you ever stepping down to. That would be the worst thing for someone who's created their life in the waiting room and they don't even know who they are, Kevin. They don't know themselves. When I used to see clients, I coached some of the most incredible people, very successful. I was a little nervous for myself as a coach of those people. And one of the things I saw is the suicide ideation, that they were not going to kill themselves, but there were thoughts there that were shocking to me. And I know that most of these people don't think there's a way to live a different life, and why at first you have to try to go slow and to not threaten the kind of destruction of the waiting room, because that is actually a big threat for yourself. There's a lot of fear that comes from that place when someone's listening and saying, I'm never gonna, me stepping down, that's not realistic. And that is the lie. And we have to go slow. I always say, I call it in the book, I call it in the work that I've done for all these years, plug in. We have to do very low risk. We have to take such a low risk step, Kevin, that the metaphor I use is that the survivor self is asleep, thinking that we're just going from one room to the other in our metaphorical waiting room. But we are sneaking out towards the right life by very low risk, so we don't activate our amygdala, our fear center, so we can go out and come back in safely for ourselves without threatening the destruction of the life that we've built because of the adaptation that we have experienced throughout our whole life. This has to be subtle, and it has to be very methodical and careful for it to happen and for it to work for everyone.
And you have some steps, and I want to hit on some of them, but I found myself wanting to ask this question, Christina, as we look at, you have it in your title of your book, Grief and Heartbreak, that I found myself thinking, what's the opposite of grief? Because the point isn't just be happy.
Oh, no.
I'm going back to your story, which we haven't told. Well, part of your story.
Yeah.
In 2003, your 31-year-old husband was diagnosed with stage 4 colon cancer, and quickly passed away.
Yeah.
So that happened. You had grief. You had heartbreak. You didn't just Pollyanna over it, and now you're just happy. You still have. Maybe explain that. It's not that you left the grief, but there's some reconciliation. Explain that.
Yeah. And it was a long journey. So what people always find very fascinating is that, in my 20s, was doing my master's in counseling. And I specialized in grief because, as I told my professor at the time, is that I love people so much. I could never imagine losing them. And I want to be a support and help for those who do. Now, at the time, Kevin, I had no understanding of what was going to happen in the future or what was coming at me. And I did my thesis on the stages of bereavement and learned all the theoretical stuff and all the knowledge as a professional that I needed. And then it happened to me. I'm surprised I survived, to be honest with you. And I loved him more than words could ever describe. And we had 2 daughters together. And I knew then that every book I read, every professional I saw, every knowledge I had didn't even come close to what I experienced. I felt like I was insane. I was living as an alien on planet Earth. And I was getting casseroles being delivered to my house from people. They didn't have the skills to help me, right? So I started from that place where I wanted to run away from my profession and my doing anything to help anyone. And at the time, I never thought for a minute I would ever be happy again. And the opposite of grief, to answer your question, for me at the time was that I had the privilege of having a good day. Like that I would wake up in the morning one day. I couldn't believe that I would ever wake up in the morning one day and, be like everyone else. I thought that was robbed. That was taken away from me. And I promised at the time to myself that if I ever make it back to life, life reentry. If I re-enter life again, meaning that I could feel happy going to a barbecue or hanging out with my friends without feeling this doom, this heaviness inside, I would go back and get everyone else and help the world. And I did that about 4 years after I resigned from the corporate job I had. I worked for a mega pharmaceutical clinical trial organization company called Parexel. And I resigned and started writing. But even then, I knew how I was experiencing this. I didn't have the input of everyone else. And I think, honestly, from everything I've seen and experienced, millions of people are grieving the loss of their original self, their true self, the life they should have had, but it's not the life they think. They are not even familiar with what that could be, because we're so far away and disconnected from that part of us that is here to express. I mean, I went back to school in 2021 to become an artist, right? And do you know how hard it was for me to make that decision? And I knew all of this. I was teaching all of this. I talked to my groups, to my students. I said, that I had to keep it a secret that I went to do an MFA in painting, because I felt like, what would people think of me? This is how crazy it sounds now, right? And I'm going to say this. I got accepted in the university in San Francisco, and I remember I felt bliss, not excitement, not joy, pure euphoria. Like, it was like I felt something I don't remember ever feeling before. And I was alone. I was sitting on my back deck, and I just sat there, Kevin, and I said to myself, why did I wait this long to do this for myself? I mean, I waited since I was 5 years old to do this. Like, this was what I craved, but I, for many reasons, didn't want to give this to myself. As we know now why, and all the invisible losses that come with that, and the moments of impact. I didn't think I was worthy of it, I guess. I didn't think that I deserved so much pleasure and joy just to do something for the experience of, like, the opposite of grief, which is just fulfillment for its own sake. Like, to do something just because it feels good in that moment in time. And I'm not talking about drugs and alcohol. I'm talking about expression, self-expression. I'm talking about, like, I can't tell you how I feel when I'm sitting and I paint every day. I have a lot of homework for school, right? I sit in here and paint these worlds that don't exist in reality, right? And I'm like, I'm not going to say like a kid, but I'm like, I'm me, Kevin. Yeah. It's me, it's me, Kevin.
I'm thinking about that. I think of book titles all the time. That's what a great one. It's me. It's me.
Everyone.
And I am so tracking with you, Christina. I'm so loving watching and hearing you, because I can feel the energy. Yeah. And what resonates most with me is there is nothing more for you than that I would want than that. I don't want, if you said, go feed a third world country or clean water or end sex slavery and all these great things that you can do as well. But at the end of the day, if you're not lit up, we're not getting the best of you. I don't need you over here helping somebody at half mast and out of drudgery or bitterness or just exhaustion. And I don't want to discount anybody who's doing all they can to help in wherever they are. But also, I would want for them selfishly, because the more you're lit up, the more it lights me up. But I also know, man, it's I'm good. You get spiritual if you want to, or take it in whatever context you want, just from a scientific energy. The more lit up you are, the more you're lighting things up. And so to hear that and to go out, and I do appreciate you saying it. I paraphrased it, because as you were talking, I'm thinking through my own filter. And you did say, you're going out and doing something that's, I'm going to call it constructive. Yeah. You're doing art and you're expanding your own knowledge and in embracing something that resonates with you. But I'm going to call it constructive as opposed to destructive. Because if somebody says, dude, it lights me, I'm going to be, well, I'm just going to go with the point, guys. I'm going to go to Vegas, man. I'm going to get wasted and party and whatever. And we're not talking the same wavelength here. I mean, if that's your gig, go do it, but that's probably not lighting you up and lighting the rest of us up. And I'm not feeling the same vibe from you on that. We are talking about a constructive aspect, but I think I've spent a lot of time, Christina, judging some of the things that people did. Like, is that altruistic? Is it really saving the world? How does that benefit other people? And now I'm looking at you going after an MFA a few years ago, in your almost 50 at the time, I guess. Yeah,
I was 49 at the time. I'm graduating next year. I was doing it while writing the book and teaching actually clinical trials. And I started out. So for people who say, I don't have time, I don't have the money, I did one class at a time to begin with, very slow. But then once you I just want to say to everyone, guys, once you step into yourself, I am telling you, there's no going back. So what will happen, the more of that medicine you give yourself, now looking back at myself, all these juncture points, all these crossroads that I even after my first husband passed away, you would think I'm going to go and live the best life because I know how it ends, right? I went into mega survival mode for my kids to get all the things, but I actually had some money in the bank at the time. I could have done something with art, or even if I didn't have anything, I could have taken a class at the side. I could have done something, and I chose time and time over again to do something else, which, yes, I got to help so many people, but I'm going to share with you what happened to my community once I started sharing that I went back to school to do art. Oh, Evan, you know what they say, it's not about what you say that people can change their life, is how you live your life.
Yeah.
And if you are at a place at the forefront in the public, like you are, like anyone who's listening, who has access to influencing people, the way we live our life and the actions we take is so much more beneficial than me teaching you about life reentry and me telling you things. It is about the way I'm living my life. And yes, let me say also, for me to be here at this place, to be my most true self, not only when I'm doing art, but when I'm having this conversation so they can be fun for me, it took a lot of mental stacking. And this is the honest truth. I have a huge survivor self to fight every day to accept myself for who I am, for who truly I am, for the part of me that is here, Kevin, that is having this conversation with you, instead of the part of me that is protected in every way, that I'm worried about my accent, I'm worried about, to speak succinctly and say it in the right way, and here's the teachable moments and I'm not interested in that, because that is not going to give me the range of time with doing this as if I did it in my most artistic way, in my most, I'm having fun. As you can, what other way could I do this now that I've learned all these lessons? In December, I was experiencing panic attacks. Talk about being vulnerable and sharing this part of me. As I was approaching, and this is my third time round. This is my third book. I've done so much public work. And all of a sudden, because I had changed my life so much, I had stepped into that original self. I have said yes to myself for the first time, Kevin. And all of a sudden, this phase was coming. You know what happened to me? I didn't think I could do it. I didn't think that I could step in the public in the way that I have done before. And I started to panic, and I hadn't experienced any kind of panic attack for at least since I was a teenager. So much so I thought I was having heart attacks. And they were happening every day. It was my kids, my husband, everyone was like, oh my God. I said, what is happening to me? Right? And I had to learn that the only way I could step into this part of myself, of the survivor self, of me doing this, it would have to be in the same way I'm doing my art.
Yeah.
This would have to be a painting we're painting together, Kevin. This is the only way we could do this. And here we are. And it took me a lot of work, I've never journaled so much in my life than I've done in the last 6 months. I never stacked my thoughts as much as I like getting that survivor out and replacing the code with the version of that original self that I needed to not only have when I was painting and I was in school, but to have it here too. So we could breathe and be and express and change people's lives.
You're just a fire of inspiration, Christina. I love it. And I love these conversations, and I love when I hear what I know is confirming, and what you're talking about. I keep coming back to Maslow's hierarchy, Maslow's pyramid, which starts out, and folks, if you don't know it, you can go look it up, but it starts out, and at the bottom, you start off with what you keep saying, survival mode. You get a job, you pay the bills, you take care of stuff. That's kind of the bottom. And then you go up the next level. And at the top is self-actualization. And even that it's a pyramid with self-actualization at the top, it kind of by proxy does a disservice to the concept. It means that maybe you'll get enough, take care of things enough and have some money in the bank and have some experiences, and you can evolve, and maybe you'll get up here to self-actualization. I think, well, that's a bump. What a disappointing thing. And I'm looking at my kids now graduating high school, and I'm going, college, job, figuring out, how about we flip old Maslow's hierarchy, and why don't you just stay down here? Can I fund your self-actualization and figure out look in the mirror, take back to your questions of understanding yourself. My kid at 18 can go, well, my story began when it's pretty fresh. They should be able to know it. I grew up I can help them fill in the blanks. I know what you grow up in, and they can, give their side of that. The hardest thing in my life has been, what a great thing for a young person to do, any of us. Now, if somebody's listening to this and they're 70 and you haven't done it, do it now. The hardest thing in my life has been, and then even though I was raised by great parents or good parents or well-meaning parents or damaged parents, whatever I guess they got to put in there, but then to say the reality of what they feel like they experience and where it's brought them to now, as opposed to, I feel like so many of us, we end up, well, you may never get there.
That's right.
Self-actualization.
Never.
And I think that would be, I don't know the stats, we can make them up, but how many people never touch it? They just go through. And I was at risk of that, Christina. I looked at myself. This came up in a show a few months ago, and I realized I looked at myself like a tool. I'm just a tool to get things done. It worked as a pro athlete. I'm a tool to try to get to the finish line and get on the podium. I'm a tool, and let's train it and harden it and strengthen it and, get more skill and go do it. And of course you can take that into work and do that. You can take that into relationships. I'm Superman. I'm God. I fix everything. I'm responsible for everything and everybody. And then I say, is there any joy? Do you feel fulfilled? No, I feel burnt out. I'm like burnt to a crisp and having to realize that there are limits, that I am human. And oh my gosh, can we save people from that? That's the excitement of this now and I have to embrace the excitement of learning this now at 53 and expecting I've got some time to live it out. And thank goodness that I figured anything out instead of just being a tool the rest of my life that burned out in a ball of flames. But I'd love to help others figure it out at 23 or 33, which is what we're trying to do. And you start off, I mentioned some of your steps. I mean, your number one step is the awareness phase. if we did what are those little I guess AI is what you use now that we're in the dawning of AI, you put it in there and go through all my shows, and even the things that I say, the word aware has got to be at the top of the list. Aware, which belies the fact that we as a culture, you and me right here and everybody listening, that the thing that we are most, I don't want to be negative, but most at danger of is that we're just unaware. We don't know what we don't know.
That's right. We don't know.
And we're back to the hidden The
Yeah.
hidden things, the things that
Invisible.
are hidden to us are the things that are eaten away. So number one on your list, I mean, it's part one of your book, is the awareness phase that we've got to take time. And I think for all of us, we got to look at, well, and it's not something we just arrive at, right, Christina? We don't just go, boom. Okay. I mean, you're not sitting there going, hey, I'm Christina and I'm talking to you because I am now fully aware.
Oh my God. I have to say that this is a kind of way of this way to live.
Okay.
Going through these phases is the only way to live, the only way forward. So we don't, because no matter how, let's say I've experienced one of the most incredible life reentries of my life, and I went through the last 6 months specifically. I went through this process that I've created and I put to so many people that I've gone through before, but this was like the most aware I became and the most knowing of myself. But I also know that you can't rest in that awareness because you will learn more, that the kind of adaptation to adapt in the new circles and the new societies and the new places that you're ending up will be there. There's pressure to imagine you moved into a new neighborhood. Let's just put it like that. Yeah. And you're in this new place where you're so happy because look, all the things you figured out for yourself. You're living this new life. You're wearing new clothes. Your hair looks different. The job that you're starting is different. The way you speak to your kids, the way that you're engaging with your friends. But there's the neighbors there. They're going to be there. It's going to be very rare that we will ever find ourselves in a place when we're not being witnessed and we're not being influenced by the collective survivor voice. So in this new place that you found yourself, you have to continue to do the work to become aware of the progression of the survivor voice, because you want to do well in this new place. I want to become a great artist, let's say. But really, is this how I came into this? I didn't come into this like this. I came in for the pure joy of doing the art. Now, whose voice is telling me to be a great artist? Whose voice is that, Kevin? And that's the question I ask myself. I'm like, who's becoming competitive all of a sudden, right? Who is this surviving or is this thriving? What does thriving look like? And I call the wisdom, and you love the word wisdom, the wise part of us, I call it the watcher self. Yes, we have watchers outside, but there is a watcher inside of you that knows you better than anyone else, Kevin. That part of you that shuts down when the survivor voice is so grand and so persuasive. We have to find a way to come from that voice. So we reflect back the truth to the watchers that are watching us. And when I named that wise voice, the watcher self, I struggled with that because it's a very intense word, but there is a witness inside of you. Don't you know that, Kevin? You know it, right?
It's interesting you're asking me that right now, because I'm sitting listening to you and was trying to reconcile in my mind that I get what you're saying. I have struggled, though, Christina, with being, again, I'm just looking out at what I do, being a tool, like I said, performing. And then when I get a message like that to go, Kevin, you know yourself best. And I don't feel like I do. And I've needed help. I've needed some guides like you to help me. And so that's what's so exciting is I read along and go, oh, okay, it resonates. So it's inside me. It's kind of like my message on Drive. Yes. There's no driven, that's my claim. There's no somebody's driven and somebody's not. No, we all have drive. Now your drive may be stuck in park, maybe stuck in reverse. It may be revving out in first gear and you're about to blow a gasket and you need to learn how to shift gears, whatever, but you got plenty of drive. It's all there. It's just what you're doing with it. So, and there I have wisdom of me is inside of me. I was just unaware.
And it's suppressed. It's very suppressed. So let's say if I was to put percentage on the survivor mindset, I would say that's like 85% of how we interact with our environment and the people in our lives and our job. 85% if we're not careful, if we're not doing the work. That's how it is. Then you have, I would say 10%, especially if you're doing the work, you hear it. Here's the wisdom. Here's the watcher self who knows you better, who remembers the original self. That's the part that remembers, has every memory. And there's a chapter where I wrote the watcher self pages, like literally, I have written this book 3 times. Those pages just came out the way you see them in the book. And they basically, I want you to know the watcher part of you is the part of you that actually remembers who you are. It remembers. It will take away every doubt the survivor self puts in you to keep you protected in that wrong life, because the right life will shake the foundation of what you're standing on right now. And that watcher has watched over you, Kevin. It has been a part of your life always, but it's suppressed. So we want to increase that percentage from 10 to 20 to 25. 30 would be amazing. Imagine being able to experience life from knowing yourself. And then there's the last 5% is the kid, that part of you that's connected to the original you, that thriver self. That's part of you that's the most real and operates without care of who is insulting and cancel culture and self-correction. It's just is there being themselves.
Yeah.
You know, when
it's interesting, Christina, as you talk about that, and I'm thinking about my journey. I tend to feel like I was a little more, I don't know, maybe more repressed than the norm. I was so forward out there performance thinking that it did for me take some people almost like to kickstart the process to testify to me. And I did have therapists that were great, though it might have been my brother, who you know, Jared, and it was actually working through my branding around my book and having to come back and do, I'd spent all my time behind the microphone. I'm just the host. I'm the host talking to people who have a message. And now I'm the guy with the message. Well, now I hadn't looked that way. And he's going, we got to bring out your stories and your credibility and whatever. And he starts pulling stuff out and he's going, holy smokes, dude, I've known you your whole life. You're amazing at this and you've done this and look at the gravity of this. And this is how I see your propensities. I'm looking at it going, holy smokes, I didn't know that guy. Now getting that kick started and being aware, like you said, now it feeds on itself. And now I'm getting to know me and I'm getting that awareness. And it's been a process. So as people hear this, for some, it's going to be easier than others. And I think there's some people who, well, I was going to say naturally, would you say maybe so, or maybe they had it modeled for them. As I look at my parents during my formative years, and I say this, respect mom, as she's listening at some point, they didn't know themselves either. They were going and trying to make a better life than what they grew up with. And they did an incredible job of building dramatically on that, but they didn't know to look at themselves. Matter of fact, I think my mom would say she didn't really do that till she was about 50, which interestingly, she started up her art. And now she is a commissioned artist. And so I didn't see it modeled. So if people who have seen that modeled, and for parents listening, that's the opportunity we have to model that to our kids. But for those who didn't, it's going to be harder for some than others. And you talk about that, the awareness phase. Now it's interesting. I'm such a conceptual person. And I keep talking about all these great steps. I want people to get the book because Christina, you do such a great job of making it tangible. So here's the concept. And now here, walk through it. Step 1, step 2, step 3, do the exercise, do whatever you do that. Great. I am just so conceptual. So forgive me, folks, go get the book. You can do the details, but I did want to hit, because you have, after the awareness phase, it was really important to me that you have, the next one is the defensiveness phase.
Oh my God, Kevin, let me just say, you're going to hit some obstacles, when you become aware. So there's an exercise, the cleanse exercise, which I've been doing this work for 14 years. I've seen thousands and thousands of cleanses. And what a cleanse is within the group, I would ask, let's say a group of 150 people. I would say, I want you to write whatever is on your mind and put it on our forum here for every other 150 people to see it and read it. And you have to be honest with whatever is on your mind and write it down. This is not about your story, because we've done the story part the week before. This is about your current thoughts. And at the time, and this started in 2010, with private clients in 2011, as I started my very first group at the time, didn't realize for some reason that I was asking for something really courageous. Like, because I wanted people to see each other inside each other's minds. And in the last year, I'd spent time people writing to me, and I realized, my gosh, everyone's writing the same things to me. Everyone is sharing the same problems. I started seeing we were so alike, struggling with the same survivor voice and the same kind of struggles. And we started writing down. And the moment people started sharing their current thoughts, and they had to do that every day for 10 or 15 minutes a day for the whole week, and they had to read each other's cleanses. And once we got started, and that happened every time, I mean, imagine finally feeling free to share yourself as you are, to be accepted as you are, and to see that everyone else is like you. And you're no longer someone who's feeling these things, and you're the only person who's feeling them, and everyone is the same. So that awareness started with truly sharing what we're feeling, what we're thinking, instead of modifying and self-correcting to make it politically correct, to make it right. So that was the beginning. And the cleanse has become one of the most popular exercises. Currently in my Facebook page, we do a cleanse, a public, outside of a group, a public cleanse with close to 500,000 people who could, not 500,000 people writing, but close to 500,000 people who could witness, read those cleanses. And every Sunday evening, I put a little picture on and say, cleanse, we're number 5. Next week will be number 6. This Sunday will be number 6. And people, more and more people come and share themselves as they are at that moment in time and read everyone else's. And we start to become aware of where we're at. And without the awareness, without then looking for the code that has been inserted a long time ago and has been strengthening as the years go by, that survival code, and we imagine extracting that pattern out and flipping it to speak from that wise part of you, that witness. And we cannot act. Do not jump and the net will appear. Do not go out. Not every mountain is the right mountain for you. Do not just take action without knowing why, where, what, and how. This is very important. If we are taking action without reframing, without rewriting the code, we're actually acting from the survival voice, and we are creating just a slightly different version of the life we already have.
Gosh, you said so much in that, Christina. You're reinforcing again this aspect of survival mode, which I've been talking with a friend. He calls it safety consciousness. Mm-hmm. That it'd be an interesting. We could make up the thing. That if we're back here as cavemen, whatever you want to call it, that we lived 95% of the time in survival mode because you had to. Today, do we even need 5% of it? We are not physically at risk of much of anything ever. Most people, it's at least to take it into America. Obviously, we've got war-torn countries right now and things happening, but the majority of the people listening to this, we want to evolve. We think about ourselves evolving. We love watching sci-fi stuff and thinking about Martians and stuff. Well, we have, and we're at a place now. What are we so scared of? I just keep coming back to that with myself. Sitting there on the couch, in the morning, drinking my coffee and having these feelings of anxiety, or whatever, going, what on earth is happening? I don't know that I know anyone who's at great risk of much of anything other than a car wreck, which could happen to somebody. Other than that, I don't have one friend right now. I don't care how bad their finances are or how bad mine are. Nobody's going to end up homeless. There's just no, if you know me, folks, if you know me, you're not going to call me. I'm not Daddy Warbucks, but we got resources, we can help. Maybe I can pay your mortgage. Maybe you come live at my house. I mean, we all have that. What are we? So those worries, those fears so seldom ever really come to pass. It's all up here, in our head. And what you said was really interesting to me as people shared in your groups collectively, that they heard so much similar feelings from other people. Because I remember my first time a therapist, it was actually marriage counseling years ago. And we come in and of course we think that our issue is just, incredibly crazy and wild. And they're like, hey, and he was trying to make us feel good. I just want you to know this. I hear this every day. You're very normal. And I actually almost felt, he was trying to comfort me. I almost kind of felt offended. Like, well, crap, I don't want to be normal. Surely this has got to be the worst issue ever. The worst thing. He said, no, dude, people are in here every day, multiple times with the same thing you're talking about. And after I got past wanting to be special, I guess, to realize, oh, well, that makes it more palatable and makes me kind of take a deep breath, get out of survival mode and go, okay, how can we understand this? And to credit your book, go to number 3, which is the action phase. And all right,
Kevin, I want to say something here.
Please.
So we've evolved as species, as you said, and we live in this modern day world where the biggest fear that I found, the biggest worry, the reason why we adapt, we survive, we make it through, is the fear of losing love. And that is a very big fear, maybe for some people, because being homeless is not reality for most of us. What is reality is fear of losing love and acceptance and being seen and accepted and, taking care of that. I
want to ask why. I'm curious though, why? Yeah. Because I mean, granted, we're humans. It's ingrained in us. We are bred to want to belong. We want to be accepted. We want to be, so we get that. But then why is it so dramatic that I'm sitting there by myself, that I would be sitting there by myself, so fearful that I'm going to be loved? Because I'm going to put this on you to answer or to address, because I intellectually, even spiritually, I want to say, gosh, my self-worth needs to be here. Now, I don't want to be a hermit and live by myself and never have a relationship. I want other people, but I don't really want it or to need it. And yet, so for you to say the biggest fear is fear of losing love, is it fair to extrapolate that out to because we just don't feel it inherently in and of and for ourselves?
It's not just love from a spouse or a partner. It's love in a bigger sense. Our colleagues to accept us for who we are, to show us that they're interested in us. It's fear of losing love in a bigger way. And imagine, I guess the example I can use is you have this amazing, incredible podcast. And the way you receive validation is through how many listens and how many people listen. And that's kind of a love. You're receiving love. Now, it's natural for the survivor self to say to you, and I used to have my own podcast and say, who can I bring in? What can I do that will speak more to people, right? And recently, as you shared, you're starting to ask different questions and looking for different ways to create this environment. But most people who have a show of any kind, who write a book, who are putting a product out there, they're asking the question that is not about what is enjoyable for them. It's about how can I receive love through this. And yes, it comes in the form of money, it comes in the form of likes. And we live in a culture where love is being shared in very measurable, unnatural ways, right? So it's adapt
likes and followers.
Yes,
and
we adapt our message, our beingness, who we are. So because we are afraid of losing love, however you want to, what kind of definition you want to add to what love is in that sentence, but that's what it is. And that's catastrophic for some people to not be, it's like in high school, the kid that sat by themselves. because they were not accepted in the group, in the cliques, in the that's just, they're sitting by themselves because they're not part of anything. That is the worst possible experience. That is, for them, maybe they don't care that they may be homeless. That's not even in their reality. You know, I've had fathers write to me and tell me how they walked into their daughter's bedroom and she was hanging from the ceiling. And what could it have been that took place in school, Kevin, that could create such a response? It is as complicated as simple as not feeling loved by your peers, your friends, and to not be accepted as you are. And we would do anything to adapt so they can say yes to this. And that, Kevin, for me, that's very heartbreaking. And I know it is for you. I don't want to live in a world like this anymore. I want the invisible to become visible. I want the hidden to come to light. I want us to take responsibility for the conversations we're having with each other. I'm taking responsibility for our conversation. You're taking responsibility for that we are speaking for the things that are right and that can help us in this moment, in case this is the last conversation we'll ever have, that this is for us and it's for them. And it's not the other way around. And that is not selfish. I want this to be right for me, Kevin. I want this to be right for you. Now, if it speaks to other people, that's awesome too. If my paintings are being liked by others, I have my paintings in a show right now. Great. But does it matter beyond the fact that I enjoyed making these paintings, that I had one of the best conversations I've ever had with anyone on an interview? That I'm going to remember. That's a memory for me. And that's a memory for you, for my life. We are here to have our soul's journey. If we take this to a spiritual place, we are here. And people say, you know, we're here to help others. Yes, sure. But the only way we can help others is by helping ourselves and finding our path and our journey of this soul that we're here to experience, to learn our own lessons, to fulfill ourselves. Like, if I'm here to paint and I'm not painting, who am I going to help? Yeah. Nobody. If you're here to, I don't know you well enough, but if you're here to be a messenger and not a host, then are you spending 100% of your time being a messenger, right? Being out there, writing 10 books, Kevin. You have material for 20 books, right? Yeah. Whatever that is for you. I'm not saying don't do this, but and for me not to write books, but my God, you know, that's the only way to live. It's the only way.
It is. I thank you for saying that. I want people, I mean, you going after, you know, art, something that maybe seemed like a different journey. I mean, my own, Christina, has been, it doesn't look that drastic probably from face value. I mean, I have been interested in, let's call it human performance for a long time, personal development. And so I have been, no matter what I ended up doing, I would gravitate and I find myself back here talking to an audience of people. So that's what I enjoy doing it. But it was initially to find, you know, brilliant people and do a good show. And I got accolades for doing a good show. And I got bored.
Yeah.
And realized that I'm sitting there looking at the watch and going, okay, you know, I'm kind of done now, but I'll ask a couple other questions. And the shift during my own, gosh, you could almost call it the, you know, dark night of the soul or the hero's journey or whatever. Yes. And realizing that as I was actually doing this and realizing, holy smokes, this is like, you need to send me an invoice because I'm getting fed here. and as the flavor shifted, it could look like I'm doing the same thing, but man, it is night and day to what I was doing even a couple years ago, maybe. And now I'm having these conversations and it's what I am curious about, it is my story. Yes. And that resonates so much more with everybody than the, you know, performance aspect. So it was, again, being true to myself, but for people to hear that it may not be some drastic, maybe it is a drastic change. And if it is, go for it. But it may just be a shift in your own awareness, and authenticity. Now I'm being authentic. So I don't sit here. And I've had people say this, especially women, I got to say, that have said, I like how you're not sitting there like you figured it all out. You're just we feel like we're on the journey with you. You are, you are, because this is it. I'm not sitting here. I would say, I like the word guide, because I'm there with you. And I appreciate you sharing even, that you said a minute ago, I think you said, I've been doing this work for 14 years. And yet you shared with us that not long ago, you kind of went through another valley and anxiety attacks that you're still living it. Now, I imagine you dealt with it better. You recovered better.
Faster.
You were wiser, less collateral damage.
Yeah. But it was definitely a shock to me, because here's me coming into this thinking, I've gone through so much. I've done so much. I've done so much personal work. Like, what is happening to me? I actually thought I was having a heart attack because I couldn't reconcile it any other way. This is not, and nothing was happening. Nothing was happening, but I was obviously, going through change, and things were happening, and I was putting myself out into the world. But it's like, the most important thing to remember from this conversation is that what you said, the shift doesn't have to be a dramatic change of industry, change of job. It is the dial. And I remember going to Tony Robbins, like in 2010, 9, whatever it was, event, and not saying he's great, he's not great, he's Tony Robbins, and he said that, so I have to give him that credibility. He said, change of 2%, change in your life by just a tiny part of what you're doing could make a huge difference. You may not have to leave your spouse, but you may have to tell them how you're feeling. You may not have to leave your job, but you may be better if you got a job that is slightly different in the same company, or that you might have to have a conversation with someone that you're not feeling great with, and to be okay with what happens next. It could be a conversation. It could be that you're starting to not just work out, but doing something to move your body that you enjoy instead of just lifting weights or whatever that is. It could be so simple and so small. Gardening. It could be something that you didn't think would actually benefit you at all, because this is not for me. I need something more. I need greater. Do you know who you are to be able to answer that question? And so you go from awareness, you go from that place, you go into defensiveness. No, that's not, I'm not going to change this. What, I'm fine as I am. I'm fine as I am. There's no need. Look how great I am. I should be grateful, right? The screens are telling us to say that. Then you start to reframe, and you start to change the script that's running you. And people talk about that a lot, but let me say, it's really running you. And you are not the pilot. You are not in charge of your life. And we are so asleep, we don't even know that it's happening. And then if we take action from the part of us that knows, Kevin, the action is going to look very different. And even if it's subtle for others, for us, it's going to be different. As you said, the kind of conversations you're having, they're speaking to you first and then to everyone else, because that's the most important part in your life, Kevin. You're in this body. Your consciousness is in this body, this 53-year-old body, and it's here to do your life, not mine, not your kids, not your wives, not your neighbors, you. And it better feel really great,
I love that. I yesterday was with a group of people and had a girl talking. She made the reference of being afraid she was on the right path, on the wrong path. I'm afraid that I'll miss. And she was talking from a spiritual standpoint, even a religious, but that I'm, not on God's path. I'm on a wrong path. And I know her, and I said, I'll keep her anonymous, but I said, I know you. I know what you're doing. You are on the right path. Now we might question the vehicle that you're in right now. And it just resonated with me. And I'm thinking, as you talk about, again, chipping away that I have felt like I'm not on the wrong path, but I've now become aware, gotten past the defensiveness, now taking action. And I've been able to, I took a backpack off I'm on the path, but now I'm freer, because you got me thinking about some of the things that I may be doing that tactfully look similar, but it's a different spirit and a different energy, which is everything. And we all know that. If somebody's serving me out, again, I said this before, begrudgingly, out of bitterness, whatever, please don't. And if they can do it out of joy, it's night and day. Even though the action may not look that different, it feels the difference of how it feels is everything, and how it feels to me. So back to your, Tony Robbins 2% thing. Yeah. That 2% less, that 2 pounds less, that whatever can be dramatic.
And I realized it took me years of doing this work to realize that actually life reentries, when we reenter life, most of the times it's an internal experience. It may look the same on the outside. I mean, I still live in the same house. I've made all these changes. I'm still looking the same way. I'm me, but oh my God, Kevin, inside of me is like everything is different. I remember when it started to, when I started to say yes to myself more and more, I'm like, my God, I said, my life is going to start to change even more. I started to not be afraid of it, but because as we know, when we change the inner dialogue, I mean, things start to change externally. And I literally held on to I am even now holding on to my ground, to stay grounded, because so many things are changing. And I don't know, this new frontier, what it looks like, how it's going to be, but what I can trust is to trust in myself, to stay true to what I want, not what I should want, how I should behave. And it's a daily battle. It's every day that I fight to be true to myself. And I grew up in Greece. My parents also were good people, are good people. They did the best they could with what they knew how. But also it took them a long time to trust me, to believe in my wants and wishes, and that I had my own mind. And they used to tell me this, and I can understand why. They said, just like you feel, I feel the same way about my parents. They said, Christina, you're always in the clouds. Come down. And I'm like, you know what? The clouds have benefited me quite a lot, but we've been told to not be dreamers like that. Like I always saw such a big vision, and the world around me was too small for me. And I knew that as a child. I didn't understand it. Nobody around me had done anything that I did. I didn't have a role model. I didn't have anything, Kevin. Like nobody. I left my country when I was 18 years old, and the whole class came to the bus stop to say goodbye to me because I was the only one leaving.
Wow.
So I had nobody to say, this is right. I didn't know. I had no understanding of what it was that I was doing. But somehow I made it here. I did all the things I've done. And I trust that every lesson that's coming in and every rebellious act on my life from myself, by myself, is the right thing. So when I struggled to destroy the good things that I've created, and I want everyone to listen to this, in order to say yes to a new version of your life, in order to thrive even at changing things at 2%, you will have to destroy some of the good things from the old life. And that's going to be really hard because they're not bad, they're good, but they're not right for you. And it's going to take a lot of guts to do that.
Give me an example, even from your own life.
Yes, yeah, and it's always brave when I share this, and I will never write another book on grief ever. And I've said this to my publishers. I've said this, when I started writing this book, I said this: I'm going to die a painter. I don't know how I'm going to do it, and now imagine what I'm going to tell you. When you detach so much from something that you were working so hard to create,
an identity,
that all the good things you always wanted from that thing to happen are actually happening. And you have to fight to stay true to the life you want to choose going ahead, even if the life you're living behind as me, Christina Rasmussen, as this this extraordinary writer who has helped so many people re-enter their life. I'm grateful for that. But this is not who I'm going to be going forward. And that has been a very tough decision to make against all the success that's here or coming. That is a hard thing, Kevin, to say no to, because the accolades, the success meter of the world is like, wow, you're going to leave this behind one day. You're going to walk away from this. And I will say this to you and everyone. This makes me happy. I love doing this. It's great. But nothing comes close to how I feel when I paint.
I got a question. Back to what I said a minute ago. If you're on a path, Christina's path, I'm questioning, are you really leaving it behind, or are you just taking a different vehicle?
I think that it's a good question. And obviously this is, as you can tell, this is happening in my life. This is in the present. It's so here, right? So, so in my house, I created 2 different rooms. This is the book room. And right next door is my art studio that's larger than this room, much larger, big windows. There's a window here. But so in the last 3 months, as we are recording all these interviews or doing all these things, I would shower, dress, sit here, do all the things I have to do for the book. And then I would go change my clothes and paint for the next 3 hours. And then I would change over again. So right now, so this is how life, when you're changing your life, this is how it looks. 2 lives are overlapping, Kevin.
Okay.
And they're happening at the same time. Talk about being extremely busy. So it's actually, I'm looking at it and it's an amazing thing to witness. So they're passing by. They're coming like this. Here we are, Kevin. I'm a painter. I'm a writer. I'm a painter. I'm a best-selling author. I'm a painter. And my book is here, right? If I say to you, I know what's going to happen next, I would be lying. But what I do know is that no matter what happens next, however successful this book gets to be, I will stay true to myself, and I will be more of a painter than a writer to begin with. I will paint more than I write. I will paint more than I speak publicly. And then I will keep increasing that until it's not going to take long. I don't think it's going to take me long, Kevin. I don't know how long is long, maybe a year, 2 years. And at some point, it's a cut the tether. I'll become untethered from this identity somehow. And someone will say, people will say, she's a painter, she paints, she wrote some books too. I'm also planning on going to space. I have a ticket for that as an experience, to paint from there, and to trust that painting is at the core of my soul, and it will be the number one priority. I think that's the best I can do with this right now. But you know what I'm really proud of? That somehow I've been saying yes to both these lives and doing it from this very joyful place. I was coming into this period of time where the book is coming out that I thought I was going to be so afraid and so stressed. And as you can see, somehow with all the stacking I've done, and I'm 2 hours in the early morning, this is what I'm doing. I've managed to bring that painter here. I've managed to bring the real Christina in every way. I had this mentor once told me last year when I was telling him I'm afraid. I told him, his name is Alexander. I said, Alexander, I'm afraid to step into this again. Am I going to lose all the things I've worked so hard to get for myself? And he said to me at the time, he said, Christina, if you become who you are in art, in every conversation, in every meeting, it's going to feel like that. And he was right. He was right. It's like, this is a new painting that we painted together today, metaphorically speaking. I could not have been more honest and direct and sincere in this conversation. Even if we had it alone in a coffee shop by ourselves with no listeners, it would have sounded exactly the same. Now, I couldn't have wished for a better conversation either. And that's what I want for everything that happens next, for everywhere I get to be. I'm meeting a pretty awesome journalist for an awesome platform next Monday. And I talk to myself about this, to not be afraid, that it's okay, that it's more than okay, that should be a pleasure and fun. And I plan to do with them what I've done with every interview so far, and just show up, whether they like it or not.
Yeah.
It's none of my business.
Thank you for sharing that. And it is interesting to me, if we look at writing and we look at painting, I look at them as forms of communication.
Yeah.
And you've been doing it through your books.
Yes.
Blogs, interviews, speaking, whatever it may be. And now you're going to transfer it. I haven't had the privilege of seeing your art yet, but I would venture to say I'm going to find the same essence of Christina in your painting as I do in your words, because it's just it's the same spirit of you, the same message coming through a different medium.
Yes.
And that feels so inspiring and just hopeful for me and everyone listening as well, that we're looking at, that's what you're drawing us to, is to know us. And then you said this before, to have this authentic expression of the real us, the original us. And you have been discovering it and communicating it via words in the books, in these different, and now you have found your desire to, again, I'm going to play with my own analogy, to, be on the path, but in a different vehicle and through painting.
Yes, you're right.
And I'm so curious. Go ahead.
You're right about that. I just, as you're saying it again, I'm like, I guess the way Kevin is saying it is right. It's especially how it's translating right now. So the way it's translating in the last few months is very different to the way it was feeling before. Fear, nervousness, fear of public speaking, though nobody would tell, right? But for me, it was always hard. I always wanted to hide behind the computer, and now I don't feel that because of the work. Let me just say this, I couldn't have predicted that I would feel like this, Kevin. Like, I wanted to, I was trying to, but I didn't think I could achieve that level of fearlessness in this. So maybe, and this is the first time I'm even going to consider this, just because we're talking, it's coming from you, Kevin. Thank you for this.
All right.
I'm going to consider this maybe, and I'm so careful in saying this because the new life is still very, very young and baby-like. Everything is so precious, right? I would consider continuing, making sure that this path stays if it feels as good as how all of this feels. If it does, bring it, and I'll have enough time for both in my life, no problem at all. But it has to be from this place. Otherwise, it does not work for me, and I would never write another word if I didn't continue to feel this way. And I have to say, I always knew the work works. I've seen it so many times in so many ways. But at this level, I'd never experienced it before. And my God, I mean, I did the stacks, not only in my journals at the coffee shop early, 7 a.m. in the morning, but in my hikes. Like, I would whisper, if someone would hear me, if someone would pass me by, they would think I'm talking to myself. I said to myself, this is either I'm going to do this or I'm not, because I couldn't survive doing it the old way. I had to train my mind to be in this the way I am with my paintings. And I paint worlds that are invisible and make them visible. And it's been, there are no words to describe the experience. But I have to say, even though that's a very blissful experience for me, having this kind of conversations kind of is close. And that's great.
Yeah.
As long as we're getting close to that feeling of being true to myself, as long as I feel like this, and not every conversation will be like that. And they haven't been. Some of them have, some of them haven't. But as long as I do my part, that's what matters to me the most. Your part is awesome, and I'm so glad that we are so aligned. But someone else may not. It may not be for them. I may not be for them. Kevin,
Yeah.
And that's the part that I've re-entered from. I'm more than okay with that. I get that. I understand that. We're not on the same path. We're not all on the same journey.
You keep speaking to, and I wish I could do it justice. It's been in the past 2 days, and I've been consuming a lot of different resources. And there was one, I need to go find it, because the second time it's come back to me of, if you think about it as energy or resonance, that I want to move towards those things that I just feel resonance with, the conversations, the topics, the style of the conversation, the spirit of it, the method, even, the business methodologies. We look at different opportunities with, the podcast, and there's so many, write a book. Well, I did do that, but, public speaking and online courses and all the social media and stuff. And just being honest, I just don't connect with that. I don't want to spend my time over there, but over here, like with some of we haven't even announced it yet, but some of the new, format things we're going to do with groups of people, and things that I want to do with the audience face to face on, from a human potential standpoint, that excites me. That's where I need to go. That's where I want. And I hear that from you with the art. I'm in a similar place of some new ventures are going, I just am going to go towards that. And back to here, and you spoke to this earlier in the show, how it blows me away for myself, how caught up we can be in the shoulds, in the expectations, in the, call it the norm, whatever. And that's, again, back to survival. Our humanity wants to belong. We want to go with the flow like that. We want to do that. So I don't need to discount myself for doing that. But holy smokes, to rein myself in and going, that is not giving me life.
No.
And to back out. And I love what you're saying in regards to, the book of going, I think I'm going to let that season pass. And even that, one of my daughters, actually, Christina, I'll have to find it. She sent me something recently. She's an artist, and it was why do we think culturally that everything has to last? Anything that we invest in, get started with, begin, needs to last forever. If we do this, if you start book writing, you're a book writer. You got to do that the rest of your life. Why can't we let it be a season and then go, that was good? And I had to do that with cycling.
Yes.
I mean, at some point, especially as an athlete.
Yes.
And I had to let it go. And it was just, I didn't do it that healthfully. It was so difficult. I just compartmentalized and cut it off and severed it and didn't revisit it for 10 years. Nobody knew. And what a weird thing, but
that's maybe, I don't know, but maybe that's what you needed at the time. And there was no other way to remove the Band-Aid. Like there's no other way to do it. And I don't know if there is a right way to. Have you read the 4,000 Weeks, the book? Oh my God, Kevin.
4,000 Weeks?
Yes. What's his name? I don't want to use my internet, but and slow down our connection. But Oliver, my God, one of the best. And you and I both read it so much. One of the best books I've ever read, and it came at the time I was making
Oliver Berkman.
Yes.
Okay.
And New York Times, I mean, it's sold. It's like, if you can get this guy on the show, it would be incredible conversation.
Okay.
I think he's British. I think he was a journalist. But I've read this book twice. One of the best books I've ever read, talking about leaving things behind that were successful, case studies of professors with tenure, with lives that were great, but didn't fulfill them. But the way he writes this book is so good. So good. Life-changing for me. And I don't say this very lightly. Like, this is a great book.
Well, Your book is a great book. I do want to tell people, this needs to be part of my intro, that Kevin is, like you, I like to dream. I like the concepts. That's what speaks to me. And then you have to come back and go, okay, but what do we do next?
Yes.
All right. Well, that is your book. I do appreciate how you structured it to really walk people. You took the concept and said, okay, and here it is. And we didn't even hit, divergent phase and integration phase. And I love, it's actually on page 17 of your book, I've got the galley copy. I don't know what the final book page.
You're going to send me your address, because I'll be personally sending this to you with a note from me. That's what I'm doing. And
thank you. Yeah, that's the only reason. Most of the time, my books, the guest book is behind here, but I've got yours electronically because it's not. Well, at some point in the beginning of the book is a self-inventory evaluation. I loved it.
Yes.
Really, it was. And then again, just how you go through and give it, you literally have it, chapter 1 or part 1, chapter 1, and then homework. Here's your homework. Yes. And that I'm passionate about that, about these messages. Again, it's part of my own evolution, Christina, and realizing, I had that guest on, big superstar guest and their book that sold $1 billion. Mm-hmm. And then people would ask me about it. I don't remember. And it was devastating to me. This is terrible. I'm not integrating this stuff. I do a great show, ask good questions, but I want to learn how to do it. And you take us through that. And I've got some pieces that I want to share with, family members, like the evaluation, the inventory. I'm sorry. So I love how you did that. I'm so honored to bring this to everybody. And as I'll speak about it anonymously. As we go to our next, our other format, we're going to integrate with having some groups of people. I'm excited to have you back on soon as well. And I want to see your art.
Yes, I promise.
We'll have to visit that. And I would love to continue that conversation as well, of saying, okay, here is how you've communicated your message to date. You've done it in classes, you've done it in books, you've done it in blogs. I'm so curious to see your art and to see how you're communicating through that. I'm just enamored with that concept. So we've got more to do together, but this has been beautiful. Thank you for the time. And I'm going to go, back up in my notes here of starting these shows off with, what if this is the last conversation we have? Yeah. I hope we did it, Mary. It was a gift to me, Christina.
For me too, Kevin. Like it felt right. It felt true to us, and it will feel true to the audience. And as you know now, I didn't write this book to have a career. This is my gift to what I'm leaving behind. And, for us, as much I can leave it behind, as we talked about, this is a struggle between the old and the new identity. But for me, I want this book to be the book that will take people on this journey, that would allow them. It will be a very personal journey as well. And I have these coffee breaks in there where I wanted people to feel like we are in a group sitting together and having coffee together, and I would say things like that in the book, and I fought to make sure this stayed in the book. How did that feel? I bet this is what you're feeling. I bet this is what you may be thinking. And I wanted to remind everyone, every chance I got, that this is not your fault, wherever you are right now, and you'll want to quit, and you'll want to stop reading, because this is a lot of work and there's no shortcuts. But take your time, do the exercises, and give it to your spouse, give it to your friend, your family member. At the back of the book, I also said to my publisher, I need to make sure that this book is the book that therapists, and I used to have the Life Reentry Institute. I used to train therapists and coaches and to do Life Reentry. That is not what I want to do going forward. So what I did, Kevin, and people think, whatever they want to think, but I believe that this work doesn't need me to be walking it, taking it by hand and taking it to every single person personally. There's a guide at the end of the book where every support group, every every person can take it and use the steps to bring it to their groups, to bring it to wherever they want to bring it, step by step, and use it. All you need is this book. You don't need me. You don't need fancy trainings. If anyone's training this and getting money, just know that you don't need it. You just need this book. And it took 3 goes to get this book right. How do you explain an inner event that takes place within every person in our world that nobody talks about? It doesn't have language and it doesn't have a way to be communicated. And because I'm so familiar with it, it was hard to put it down in ways that will slowly take the person through without me sitting there doing this and explaining it. So that was the purpose of this book. And people think that I designed the cover because it looks very space-like, but I didn't. It was meant to be the team that designed it from the publisher didn't know my art, doesn't know my style, doesn't know that I love space. And they came with this, and I was like, oh my God, thank you.
That's beautiful.
It was just meant to be in so many ways. So, and the final thing I want to say is that trust the timing of your life. Trust that the timing of my life to be the way it is now, for me to show up the way I am, is now. It wasn't before. It is what it is now. And the timing of our conversation is now. Everything that you're hearing, your timing is now. And what you do with what happens next is up to you. If you don't do anything with it, that is okay too. Trust the timing of your life. I hope you do. I hope you do the exercises. I hope you discover yourself in ways that you never thought were possible, and you feel moments of bliss in the most unexpected ways, like I did. And like Kevin is feeling right now with his new ventures and the way that he's going to interact with people in blissful ways. And I hope the same for you, whoever you are who's listening, whatever you are, however great your life is, question the norm, question the status quo. And I can't wait to see what happens next, because it's an adventure. And if this was the end, I'm going out very proudly and very happy for having one of the best conversations I've had in any interview. Every day, every week, I get closer and closer to who I am. And Kevin, I want to also thank you for facilitating a space where I could do this without reservation, without doubt. I knew from the beginning, first 30 seconds, I'm like, I'm going in, I'm doing this, I'm showing up 100%. So thank you for allowing for that calibrated environment for me to do it in such an easy way. I didn't have to kind of question myself at all. I would still have done it, but I would have been questioning myself. I did not. The survivor self did not come in and say, you sure you should be doing this? No. Yeah. So thank you for that. I appreciate it more than you know.
My honor and such a gift. I always feel like I'm the one that benefits most from these, even though I'm grateful tens of thousands of people will listen to it. So Christina, thank you. I am eager to continue journeying along your path with you.
I can't wait.
Thank you, Christina.
Thank you, Kevin.
Well, friends, thank you for joining us on this journey today, this drive. Again, that is Christina Rasmussen, Rasmussen. And her new book, and again, the foundation for this episode here, is called Invisible Loss, Recognizing and Healing the Unacknowledged Heartbreak of Everyday Grief. Again, if you've got ideas, thoughts, questions, concerns on it, let me know. And if you want to get a response from Christina, I'll get that for you as well. Email me at kmiller@kevinmiller.co. I truly hope that this episode helped you today feel like you can drive further and, most importantly, enjoy the ride. Thanks so much for joining me on this journey. I look forward to meeting you in the Drive Tribe community for ongoing discussions about each episode. You can subscribe to the Drive Drop newsletter for weekly updates. Find it all at kevinmiller.co, along with all our social media and video clips. Until next time, I hope this episode helps you drive further and enjoy the ride.